Welcome back to the show, guys. I've got Philip Blackett with us today, and he's a legendary speaker, an author, multiple books. You guys have read his books. They're great. They really talk about how to bridge the gap, a divide that's dividing our country today, and his wisdom and insight in bringing groups together. He's done this for multiple groups, and it's exciting to have him on. Philip, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Happy to be here with you.
I'm gonna jump right into. I think one of my favorite topics you talk about, and really is one of those places that our world's hurting. Right, there's this divide that it feels like a divide that's getting kind of wider and wider, and it feels nonsensical to me. It feels crazy, but this divide in humans, where we're dividing each other, we have these disagreements that are causing, massive disrespect. And I think your book, "How to Disagree Without Disrespect," I think is a great book to talk about. So let's kind of dive into that. And why did you write the book, and kind of where you see it kind of mending this world?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question, Anthony. I think part of the thing we think about is the type of world we live in now. When I was growing up, there were certain things you didn't talk about at the dinner table. You didn't talk about politics, religion, money. Okay. Why? Because it could prompt disagreement that, depending on the person, it could get personal and maybe aggressive or even violent. So it's probably better just to prevent that sort of discussion altogether. The challenge now is now we've gotten to a point as a culture and as a society that it's much more difficult to have a differing opinion on any issue without putting ourselves at risk of being isolated from loved ones, getting the cold shoulder, being cursed out, or criticized on social media, um, or even unfriended, unfollowed, or swiped left, from a dating perspective, just because we have a different point of view. And so I think things are getting much worse. And I think there's a number of culprits behind it and a number of forces that are invested to keep this going. But unfortunately, I feel like if we keep going down this road, we're going to find ourselves going off a cliff as far as how we relate to one another. And if you believe that the quality of our lives is in some sense influenced by the quality of our relationships, you have to understand that in any relationship with anybody, you're likely going to come across somebody. I can almost guarantee you're going to come across something that you don't see eye to eye on. Like,
Yeah.
I guarantee you, Anthony, if we got to know each other a whole day, I can assure you there's some things you and I are going to be like, yep, absolutely, common ground. I'm right there with you, brother. And
Yep.
there's some that could be like, Philip, I can't see it. I'm trying to get there with you. I just look at it differently. And that's not a bad thing.
Listen.
Disagreement is not the one that's going to harm relationships. It's disrespect that will. And so really is trying to help people get that sense that it is possible to disagree with someone's views and still respect and love that person in a healthy relationship. Like, if I could do that after an experience I had with my family last 4th of July that prompted me to write this book, I believe that anyone else can.
Well, tell me about that experience. What happened there?
Yeah, so essentially, my family, my wife, my 2 kids, we were having 4th of July celebration. My sister brought her family up to Boston with them, and then my mom came up here as well. And so the adults were in the living room. We're just having a conversation between my sister and I. And Anthony, I don't remember what issue we were exactly talking about. However, I do know that we were on opposite ends of the spectrum on that topic. And so as we were starting to discuss it, some people would say debate, tomato, tomato. But my mom jumps in, not necessarily to pick a side, but she wanted to stop the debate altogether. She said, listen, we got fireworks planned for later tonight. That's great. I don't want to see an early appearance of fireworks happening right now in the living room. Cut it out.
Yeah.
And Anthony, why I appreciate the intent that my mom had to try to preserve the peace, keep a family memory and fondness when we look back on it. The impact was, I felt like it was a lost opportunity. It was a
Absolutely.
lost opportunity for me to get to know my sister better, vice versa. Yeah, it's something that was personal to me or something that I held importance and I wanted to share, but I couldn't do that because, you know, I think you probably would agree with me. In a world of smartphones, social media, and text messaging, some conversations are better had in person, face to face.
Yes.
And if you can't have that because you're afraid of a disagreement and you just say, hey, I'm just not going to have that conversation altogether, well, guess what? That conversation is not going to be had. You're not going to get to know that person. The intimacy or closeness in that relationship is sacrificed because of fear of a disagreement. And so my thought was, you know, if that happened to me, I wonder how many other people around the world are having that same sort of experience. Something that they care about, something they believe in, they want to share with somebody, but out of fear of a disagreement, what that can lead to, you're not having that conversation. So that's what made me say, hey, how can I help with this? And that's what made me think about what's a simple framework we could follow to help facilitate these type of conversations. And that's what got me to my book, Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You.
I don't know that as a child I was ever taught how to stand in the uncomfortable part of life. Right?
Hmm.
That there was no, a lot of that stuff you talked about, why we didn't talk about stuff at the dinner table, was that we didn't wanna be uncomfortable, like, something about being uncomfortable wasn't okay. Maybe, maybe there is some sense of a survival mechanism there that, "Hey, look, ultimately, I wanna make sure my family survives," that, if you got in a fight and you were outcast, mom's job was to make sure everybody in the tribe, every troop stayed together, right? If someone got outcast, they would. I mean, literally, go back, 15,000 years ago. I mean, literally, we would starve to death. If you didn't have your group with you, if you weren't part of the tribe, you were outcast. You'd probably starve to death. And not having that tribe mentality, that group mentality, it would hurt you. And today, that's probably not as true. You could survive on your own just fine, but there still is a little bit of that, look, if I get kicked out or if I'm not liked or I'm not part of this group, there's a real fear. And my belief it's a real underlying fear. And mom's job is, hey, I want to protect my group. I want to keep them together. And maybe even so much as the joy of having them together, right? The fear is that we'll have a conversation that will be so difficult to have that people won't be able to come back from it. And I've been there. I've been in some of those conversations, which really bums me out because I'm with you. I think that there's some value in having a conversation that you can go to places, like with God or with religion or with politics. That in those discussions, I get a whole nother worldview, right? I can get your worldview, and if I can do that in a way that has me not feel completely threatened or or even shut down, because I think sometimes what happens is you get so mad or so scared that you shut down and the creative conversation goes away and fear kicks in. And I was with a guy the other day that I study these. I love studying world religions. I love it. I like, to me, reading the different religious books and studying them with the scholars of the religions and learning it their way, like, really makes me happy. Like, I have a real joy. And I've been doing this Bible study with somebody. I've done the Bible a few times, but I'm doing one with a guy now. And we were going through a verse, and he was talking about one of the verses says, it talks about Jesus. I am the way to the kingdom of heaven. And when he was reading that, I said, well, that's kind of a metaphor, right? And he's like, no, 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 no. That's the only way to heaven. You have to believe in Jesus. And I'm like, well, but you kind of believe it like a metaphor, don't you? I mean, it's not really. If you don't believe in Jesus, you can't ever get to heaven. I mean, what about people who've never heard of Jesus? I mean, there's and the thought, when I got to that point of just that question, I could almost feel his inability to cross that bridge. To, there might be some other way of thinking. When you read the Quran, or, I mean, although Jesus is in multiple other religious texts, but there's plenty of places where people don't know Jesus at all or understand him as, as God's son. And they don't believe in Jesus like the way Christianity does. And to him at that moment, there was like a structural break in the reality when I was there. And I'm like, okay, no, no, look, I'm not meaning, look, I'm really enjoying my Bible study with you. I did not mean to really go there. And it made me sad that I couldn't have even a conversation around it because it felt like I was blasphemy. It was the word is blasphemy they use. And like I was somehow or another putting him down or his religion down. I'm like, no, it just was an idea I wanted to talk about. And, so like your sister, that same spot, where something breaks. So how do we, how do we disagree without disrespect or structurally break people down where they still feel safe in a disagreement?
Yeah, so I think, it's 5 steps, I would say. The first step is, you know, and let's use your example here with the Bible study as an example here to illustrate. So the first step I would say is separate the idea or belief from the identity of the believer. The reason why that's significant, Anthony, is because depending on the person and the topic at hand, you may come across a person that is so intertwined with that particular issue or belief that it essentially becomes who they are. And
That's
so
right.
for you to
I'm a believer, right? Have you heard that before? I'm a believer, right? And,
absolutely.
and then to say, well, okay, I'm going to just let me just I just want to talk about a possibility of other ideas. So, like, my whole idea in the conversation was to think about, look, each of these religious books I read with them, I really hear their culture. They're all talking about a supreme being in some way. They're all talking about very similar
Hmm.
principles and practices and techniques. They're very when I read them, they're all very very similar in the approach to living a better life and a better community and the practices. But you can also hear their history and their culture and where they live. The way their environment is in the writings, right? So you can feel those parts of that in there. So but it wasn't so much, so it was more to my conversation was more about that. Like, okay, how could they all be similar books or similar writings or similar? What if it's all the same God, just written in different languages?
Yeah. So I think in that instance, you're asking a perfectly valid question to ask the person doing the Bible study. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to focus on the idea at hand. But if you don't separate the idea from the identity of somebody else, that person can easily take it personal. They could get defensive because it's something that's so close to them that if you're critiquing the idea, right, then they could take it as if you're critiquing who they are
That's right.
and who they are as a person. Like you're dumb for thinking that, right? And especially if you do that in a public setting, now you got ego involved
Bing,
because now
bing, bing. Yeah.
you're trying to save face, you're trying to protect yourself, right? You feel like you have to be on the defensive because they're perceiving you as if you're on the offensive, right? And you might just be honestly just asking the question just to get further clarity or just to understand the other person's point of view. Like, why do you believe this way? Like, just share light with me. I'm not trying to gotcha. I'm not trying to, set you up to make you feel bad or to show how what you think is inferior to how my way of thinking is. It might be genuinely just wanting to have a conversation and to learn. But if you're not able to separate the two, that's where it can get challenging.
I mean, is it as much as if you believe something different than I do, I must be wrong? Is that our core? I mean, is that one of the drivers there? Is that one of the places that when that disagreement happens? Is that really what the underlying ego says? Uh-oh. 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 No, 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 no. I can't believe that. That if I that that's you're gonna mess up my worldview here. And it starts to rock us. And that is that where that fear kicks in, and all of a sudden you're like, completely shut down. Now I've missed the opportunity for a discussion that might open that up. But there's some sense in there of survival. Like literally, it's almost like survival, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course. Like I think you get further. I think the key word you said there, Anthony, is entrenched,
yeah,
which
yeah.
means you can't easily unwind or get out of it. but you're so into it that it's like, you know, if I were to question it, if I were to ask you more about what you believe in, and you might not have expected that, and as you're explaining, you're becoming uncomfortable about it. Well, my initial thought would be, well, why do you feel uncomfortable sharing what you believe in? Do you not feel confident in what you believe? I'm not judging you. I'm just asking you, but you seem to be unease about talking about it with me,
Hmm.
right? And so, yeah, I think in the day and age we live in, because people are so like tight fist on what they believe in, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. That's where conviction comes from, right? But we are in what I would say a marketplace of competing ideas and ideologies, right? And so people are going to get questioned. There are debates, public or private, and absolutely, people can take it as an honest sharing of ideas, or they can take it as a more combative, me versus you. Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose fashion.
Yeah. So I got it. So now we start with the idea that, hey, I'm going to separate you from what we're about to talk about, right? So we're look, I sister, I love you. We're going to talk about some things today that are going to be um, may or may not work for you. Great, but I want you to know at the end of it, I still love you, and even if you hate everything I say, I still love you. Now, sometimes that misunderstanding hangs out like a fart hangs out in a room, right? There's some sort of underlying, so oftentimes I do a lot of men's work, and we'll talk about a conflict or something will happen. We say, hey, all right, look, we're gonna get into this conversation, but you might want to armor up a little bit, right? You might want to say, hey, look, I'm not coming after you personally, but we're gonna you might want to put your shield on just a little bit so we can have this conversation, and you get it's not about you, right? This is about the conversation, and kind of warn or set up the space to have that agreement. So now we're separating the person from the conversation. So
Hmm.
that's step one.
Yeah, and you actually kind of jumped the gun and did step two for me, Anthony.
Oh, sorry. Oh, there you go.
No, it's great. It's part of the conversation. Step two is basically you can disagree with the belief and still love and respect the believer. Like if you had the sense, Anthony, that hey, we're about to have a conversation, but you know that regardless of the outcome of the debate or how tense it gets or how uncomfortable it gets, you knew in the back of your head that I still respect you as a man,
That's right.
that I still respect you as my friend. We're still gonna have lunch after this. We're still gonna hang out after this. I still care for your family. Would that not make you more at ease to have the conversation with me?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the joys I've experienced through traveling the world is that everywhere I've gone, when I reach over and meet other men, I ultimately find one of my core beliefs today is that everywhere I go, I find a similar man that I am. Somebody that's trying to raise a family or help their community or grow what they're doing. And ultimately they're working just as hard as I am, and they're trying to in their way. Their worlds are different than mine, but look, I'm all I really want to do is grow a family. I've got this family I love growing. I work hard for them, and I work hard for it. And the companies I own, I want to help the people that work for me. And hey, by the way, I want to survive. I want to make some good money so that I can survive well. But I find that when I know that about the other people, that whatever country I'm in or whatever culture I'm in, if I know that about them, I have this respect. There's like an underlying respect for it. Yeah, that man or woman's doing what I'm trying to do. We're just trying to raise a good family and go to bed at night with a full stomach.
Yep. So how I look at it with step two, Anthony, is actually in contrast to what you were saying before, what you do in your men's group, as far as basically prefacing the people, hey, you might want to put your shield up. We're about to have a tough conversation. We need you to toughen up. I actually would go about it trying to disarm people,
Mm,
bring the shield down,
mm.
and say, listen, I've been in sales before. One of the things I love about sales, if you're a good salesperson, is you first depressurize the situation. Listen, I'm not here trying to sell you something. I just want to have a conversation. I'm going to share with you what's going on with what I'm thinking. Let me know if it's something that makes sense for you. If so, great. We can talk next steps. If not, it's not a good fit. No problem. We're still friends. You're more likely to have that conversation when that pressure's out the room. And us being able to take a similar sense in our conversations with people saying, hey, regardless of how we feel on this, I still love you, Anthony.
That's right. Yeah.
That's not going to change in that sort of thing. It's like we don't have that type of conversation with people because many of us are living the lie that love is contingent on agreement and affirmation.
Wait, so say that again. So love, a lot of us have it.
Love,
Yep.
love is contingent on agreement and affirmation.
So it is or it isn't.
That's the lie that we're believing.
There you go. I'm with you. It's not. So I don't have to agree with. Well, hold on. I don't have to agree with everything my wife says for her to love me.
Listen, Anthony,
I
I've
would.
been married. No, I think you and I are in agreement there. Like, I've been married to my wife for 8 years. If for me to stay married was contingent on her agreeing with me on everything,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have made it past the honeymoon period. We might not have made it to the wedding.
Wait, your wife doesn't agree with everything you say? Come on, fella.
No,
Come on. I think we're married to the same woman. I don't know how. I'm not sure how Sophia doesn't. I'm not sure why she doesn't agree with everything I say. I mean, aren't I right?
but here's the interesting part. If that's the case, right? Anthony's married. He and his wife don't agree on everything. Philip's married. He and his wife don't agree on everything. But yet they're still together for many years. And what I will argue is the most intimate and close of relationships, especially if you have kids involved, right? If there's a way you can make that work in that type of relationship, is there not things you can extrapolate and pull and learn from that sort of interaction that you can apply to your relationship to your coworker, to your parents, your kids, your friends, the neighbor across the street, your friend on Facebook? Different relationships that absolutely pale in comparison of the level of closeness between you and another person that knows you much greater than anybody else, which means they know your strengths and your weaknesses, flaws and all, disagreements and agreements, and yet they still want to be with you. They still say, I love you.
That's
Like,
that's a that's a good spot to be in, right? That's a really good spot to be in.
you could take a case study just on a marriage in that sense and say, hey, how do these people stay together in spite of disagreements? And say, what can we learn from them and apply it to other people? And I think part of it is I can still love you and I can disagree with what you just said.
Nice, nice. So all right. So step three. What's step three?
So step 3 is once those first 2 steps are in place, you're basically setting the groundwork, you're prefacing, you're preparing people.
All right. So step
Now
one.
let's actually
Step one is uh, d- detach
separate the
from the
idea from the
from the
identity of the
identity.
believer.
Yep.
Step 2 is you can disagree with the belief and still love the believer.
Yep.
So that's the groundwork. That's setting it
Groundwork.
up for
Yep.
step 3. Let's actually debate the idea, but we're going to base it on its merit.
Okay.
And what do I mean by merit? I'm
Yep.
meaning facts, data, logic, research, analysis, performance, reviews, results. Like try to make it as objective of a comparison in a conversation as possible, more of a apples to apples comparison. Because what we should not do, Anthony, is get into name calling.
Yeah.
Because I believe once you get involved with name calling, there is no debate afterwards.
That's right.
You might as well just go ahead and pack up, take your ball, and go home
Well,
because it's not. There's no
yeah,
benefit there.
Yeah, it breaks down. I mean, like you're shot once. It's like you ran out of bullets for a good debate, right? You got this good debate going on, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I've run out of things to debate. Now I'm going to start shooting. I'm gonna go below the line. I'm gonna start shooting my gun at you and use name calling, and it really just takes everybody out of the whole conversation. Instead of saying, hey, look, I need a second because I've run out of things to talk about here. Or, you got a good point there. Let me ponder on it a little bit and see how it can relate to that. All of a sudden it becomes you're a jerk, you're this, whatever it is, whatever
Yeah,
that name calling you talk about. Look, I get it. Like it's a check to me. It's like a checkout, right? The
yeah.
name calling becomes a checkout.
Like I agree. Like the moment you start getting into what people would say is ad hominem references, like I'm gonna go after your character. I'm gonna try to slander you. I'm gonna try to put you down. I'm gonna try to embarrass you. I'm gonna start calling you outside of your given name, Anthony. What it tells me is one, to your point, you run out of debate points to go off of. You're now more on an act of desperation because I've debated before, what that comes off to me is, oh, I won
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you
that's right.
you couldn't, like, I want to stick to the issue at hand, but you're going off the beaten path, and what that comes off to me as, you don't have any other points to face, toe to toe with, and now we're resorting to name calling, and at that point, that's something where the debate is over.
Yeah. Now, so I want to go back to that men's group. One of the things we do in that group is we'll start by identifying the people that are going to have the conversation, right? Sometimes we'll even say, hey, would you like some support during this conversation? Right? Like,
Hmm.
hey, do you feel like maybe you're going to go below the line and maybe you want someone there to back you up and just keep you above board, right? And sometimes, like literally, we'll stand two men up in a room and we'll have a conversation. And sometimes we'll have them have a partner that will stand right next to them and keep them in alignment, right? And it'll help them not feel like they're out on their own getting shot at, that they've got some support, someone to back them up. And it kind of takes a little bit of the, um, help them deal with the sting of a conversation or something that's going to be said in there. And, I think that creates some support. And I think there's also a way in there that keeps you above board, right?
Hmm.
Let's stick to and then they start with data, right? We start with literally just data, right? All right, what's the actual data? What did the man say, or what did the person do, or what was the actual data as you remember, as if you could, it was recorded and you're playing the tape back, right? To try to get as clear and no judgment, stay out of judgment, stay into pure data. That piece you're talking about. Let's stick to that data points, right? Hey, this group did this. 47,000 people did this. 10,000 people did this. There was I was driving 45 miles an hour. Whatever the actual data is, as if someone could record that data, not hearsay, not judgment, staying in the true data. So I'm with you. So far I'm with you. You've got pure data that we want to communicate. Our goal is to be as pure about the data as we can get to.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. If you're in the courtroom, if you're in a case where it's a he said, she said sort of case, there's not really much you can go off of here. One word against another versus let's bring something objective to the table and let's look at it together. What is the evidence here? What does that speak to? Right? If you're parenting young kids, two kids are fighting amongst one another. What does the parent likely do? One, you calm them down, but two, say, hey, tell me what happened. No, 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 no. I don't want to hear about how you felt about it yet. Just tell me what
Exactly what
took
happened.
place,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I can go off of that.
Yeah. Bobby picked up a comb and he picked it up and he threw it 5 feet across and hit me in the forehead and hit me
Okay.
just like this. Right.
Okay,
Right.
Bobby, why did you throw the comb at your sister?
Yeah, no. What happened? Yeah, yeah. What happened that made that happen? What did your sister say? What was the reaction? What led up to that? The real data. Well,
Right.
she took my toy and she broke it in half. Right now, okay. What do you mean she broke it in half? Can you? Where's the toy? And is it actually broken in half? Right. Real
Yep.
data points. Right. Right. I
Yep.
got it. So you're getting real data there, and you're no emotion, staying away from the emotion. All right. Then I got mad. All that stuff that happened. All right, all that will make sense. But if I could start with the data, I think that's a pretty good spot to start with. All right, so I got it. Now we go with data points. That's step number 3. Really talk about the data points.
Yeah, like just to illustrate, like what is objective, what is evidence based, what is data based, the results of what happened. Take the feelings out the situation. I know
Got it.
people are feeling a certain type of way, but let's focus on that. And what it illustrates, Anthony, just from you saying that example is, once again, we know how to do this. Because if you're a parent of kids that fight amongst each other, you've practiced this.
That's right.
As far as let's stick to the facts at hand, and then I can make a judgment call on what happened, who was right, who was wrong, and what do we do as far as next steps.
Got it. So now we got data. Now it's step number 4.
Step number 4 is, once you actually had the debate, regardless of the outcome, whether it's, Anthony's way of thinking was right and I came to his side, or vice versa. Maybe we agreed to disagree still, or maybe some third alternative came up we weren't anticipating, that was a byproduct of us actually having this conversation came up. Regardless of what happened, let's do what we did when we were young playing sports. At the end of the game, win or lose, what did each team do?
Shook hands.
Shook hands and said, "Good game."
Good game. That's right. That's and it was one of the best lessons coaches gave me was no matter what, at the end of the game, you're going to give somebody a clear, that's great. I'm thanks for the game. Like an honorable, hey, we had an honorable battle out there, and whoever won, or however, if we won or they won, we both leave saying good game,
Hmm.
grateful, right? Really honor the battle that you just had. Whoever won, perfect.
Yep. Like, good sportsmanship is still valued when we become adults.
Yeah, yeah,
Good sportsmanship is still needed in our debates and discussions, right? Because no one likes a sore loser and no one likes a sore winner either, right? So be a good sport about what just happened here. And then that leads us to step 5.
and step 5 is
Respect and appreciate the person you just debated with. Even if you disagree afterwards, hey, chalk it up to us having diversity of thought. That's something we value here in our relationship. But more importantly, keep the door open for a continued conversation. Because maybe the case may be, Anthony, hey, listen, I didn't know why this issue was so important to you. Thanks for sharing the backstory behind it. I better understood. I never would have known that had you not told me. That gives me more context and perspective for me to think about my own positioning. Even though we still differ, I love for us to continue the conversation. There's this event happening, let's say next week. The speakers come into play. Why don't we go together, and then over beers afterwards, let's talk about how we felt about what happened and just have another conversation. Like, you can actually focus on building the relationship with somebody you just debated, because hopefully the relationship is more important than who's right or who's wrong.
there right there is a practice that my judgment is that the more we play that game, and by the way, it's not easy. It's like going to the gym, right? I mean, having an open dialogue, creative conversations, which truly do inspire the world to create much better ideas. It's like going to the gym. It hurts to get off the couch and get your ass over to the gym and do it. And the workout isn't easy, but the effect afterwards, when you kind of flex yourself in the mirror, you kind of look and go, man, I just broke through a great idea here. Or hey, I went with Bob, who's a completely different religion or politics than I am, and I got their idea, and I stood shoulder to shoulder with a man I completely disagree with, and I saw it his way. Or there's a feeling on that really feels reverent, right? Now, it's not something I was taught, right? I was not taught to be that way. I was taught, that I should know this, I should follow that, we should do it this way. There was no, hey, we're gonna allow you to have this free, open thought, this open dialect. Um, it was a little nervous to have that. Like if you didn't believe a certain belief, it was going to make you a bad person. And yeah, so I think that's a very just even saying that out loud feels like a real reverent way of being that I'm not sure that it was always taught in my community growing up.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really solid point, Anthony, because I think that you know for a lot of people we can get jaded to think about what's the point in debates, right? Like two people debating, they're very passionate about the opposite side. No one's changing their opinion, let alone changing in public. You're very rare to have somebody say, "Hey, Anthony, I never knew that. You know what? You're right. I was wrong. I'm with you." You're very rarely going to see that. However, if you change the approach on how you go about a debate, not necessarily trying to say, hey, I'm going to do my best to assert the superiority of my opinion versus the other in an attempt to get that person to concede to me or volunteer to be on my side, and instead have an approach where I'm actively listening to that person. I'm asking questions to clarify where they're coming from. I'm not being a jerk in conversation. I'm being respectful. That oftentimes the way you go about the conversation is going to be more influential to that person than your actual debate points.
That's right. Like there's some gift in that. Look, and I would say that's happened with my men's group. Like I actually learned through these other men how to have a conversation, and like there was this eye-opening experience I had that wow, we're such a diverse group of men. I mean, they're literally every shape, size, religion, cultural, color, political. They're an enormously diverse group of human beings, and then to find practices that have us get into it. There's like this. We learn from each other how to dig deeper into really tough conversations, and I think that right there, the ripple effect of that, of me learning that through them, has me be able to do things like the podcast and bring people on with all kinds of beliefs and really just like my want is to hear their humanity, right? I want to hear their really their humanity. You know, my belief with the podcast is I don't care what their belief is. I want to bring them into the podcast and really get down to their humanity and why they believe it. You know what got them there, and you know see how I can relate to where their humanness, their humanity is. And when I think when we do that, there's some gift for our audiences that look we can be a much different way than ever before.
Mhm. I think one of the things, it's always funny to me where many of us try to say publicly that we value diversity, right? It's like a code word, it's a common
Yeah,
word,
yeah,
and that's
sounds
sort
good.
like
It sounds
it's
good.
almost like a pageant word that no one should be able to object to, right?
Right.
Diversity, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, are we really speaking with both sides of our mouth here? Because
Yeah.
to my knowledge, diversity goes beyond what you see on the outside.
That's right.
Diversity also includes diversity of thought.
That's right.
You likely work with people that think differently than you. You likely work with people that believe differently from you, that go to different places of worship, and you likely work with people that vote for different candidates. A
That's right.
great case in point would be if you went to your favorite sporting event to cheer on your favorite sports team, I can guarantee you in that population cheering for the home team, you have people of different thoughts, beliefs, and political affiliations, for example, but somehow they're all united around a common cause.
Yeah. It blows me away. You'll if you go here if you're here in Chicago and you go to a Cubs game or a Sox game, I mean here in town, those two groups of people will punch each other in the face, right? But if I go to Florida, right? and I talk about I'm from Chicago. We're Chicagoans, right? I see another guy, he's a Cubs fan or Sox fan. Hey, we're Chicagoans, right? If I leave Florida and I go to London or I go to India and I see another Chicagoan, right? Or see another American, we're Americans, right? Whatever the all the other stuff kind of gets weathered away. You're right. There's kind of this, you know, it's funny how weird our attachments are, and then we'll let go of them. It depends on the circumstance we're in. That I guess our point of view at the moment.
Yep. It's part of the reason why a lot of people love sports for two reasons I look at it. Two big points. One, sports is the closest thing to a meritocracy as you're going to get. Either you can play or you can't play.
That's right.
Either you won, look the score up. You won or you lost. It's pretty clear cut. And everyone's on the same page, agreeing to the same criteria and the same rules of the game. The second thing about sports that people love is, to your point, Anthony, you may have Cubs fans and White Sox fans wanting to hit each other, right? When they see each other. But let there be a Chicago Bears game that Sunday.
That's right.
I can guarantee you those same Cubs and White Sox fans, they'll be in the stadium, probably sitting next to each other
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and giving each other high fives when Caleb Williams throws a touchdown pass. But hold up, y'all were White Sox. No, no,
That's
no.
right. That's right. That's right.
We're Bears fans. We're going against Green Bay. We are united on a common cause. And for some reason, sports is the save all on this one because one, it's the closest thing in the meritocracy you're ever going to get. And it's in some way, it's able to unify people that may be of different views and thoughts and persuasion, that sort, and you bring them up for a common cause.
Well, Philip, I got to tell you, man, you're great by choice. You've created uh, company of yours that really brings an amazing way of looking. Faithful Stewardship, name of the company, right? And you do all kinds of speaking engagements throughout this country, bringing groups together, really bringing these ideas to look. And I don't think that people. I think more than ever, we are thirsty in a time where AI is coming at us, in a time where people have gone on. Look, we came out of COVID. There was lots of frustration there for whatever caused all that nonsense to happen. And with that virus it came at us, we all got afraid. Now there was some frustration coming out of it, and the economy. And now we've got AI coming at us more than ever. As a world, we need to be bonded together into conscious behaviors and acts. And I think when I read your book, when I really go through it and really get how to disagree without being disrespectful, you bridge some amazing conversations that all of us, I truly believe, at an atomic level, at a cellular level, we believe in. I think that really we want to be part of each other. I think we all came from each other. I think that we were part of God somewhere, and we're having this individual experience. So I honor the work that you're doing. If people want to have you come in and spend some time with them and their organization and help bridge that gap and really start, show them how to create those conversations in large groups, like you've done. How do they get a hold of you? Where's the website? What are you going to do to get them on? And by the way, I'll put all that down below. So how do they get a hold of you, Philip?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Anthony. I think the big part is, let's start with step one. Read the book Disagree Without Disrespect. You can check out that book along with other books I've written. They're available on Amazon, either digital format or paperback. Just go on Amazon, look my name, Philip Blackett, PhilipBlackett. You'll find that book along with the other books I've written there. You can also check out my website, philipblackett.com, and be able to contact me there, or we can have a conversation over social media. Just look up my name, Philip Blackett, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Instagram, or TikTok. I'll be there. Happy to have a conversation. Happy for us to see how we can work together.
That's great. Philip, I'll have all that contact down below. Audience, we're always having these great conversations with amazing human beings here on the podcast. And I want to make sure that you get connected with Philip and his team. Bring them in to coach your organization, right? Bring it in to guide your company. Help them create conversations that will really move, touch, and inspire your team. For me, having Philip on the podcast has really done that. Really inspires me to dig deeper and really have our people find ways to communicate their differences that really ultimately make us a much stronger organization or a much stronger community. Philip, I'm so grateful to have you on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Anthony. I enjoyed our time together too.
Audience, could you do me a favor? Last week we had 3,000 downloads, and I noticed that more than 40% of you guys had got to the end of the podcast, but you weren't subscribers. It was it's not unusual, but if you guys could do me a favor, like and subscribe right now, it means the world to Philip, myself, and Connor and Joe in the background, all the guys who put this show together. We get great guests like Philip on the podcast. If you could take a second and do that now for me, that would be great. And as always, thanks for listening.